Dan Corneff said that once. He said, if you write the songs and you arrange the songs and you play the songs and you produce the songs and you record the songs and you mix it and you master it all, you're going to get a lot of one thing, and that is you. Just hearing someone else without telling them anything, just hearing what they think about it, basically, someone who knows what they're talking about and who's not friends and family, that can oftentimes, I think, help, just that outside perspective and not just being you all the time.
This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band Podcast. I'm your host, Benedikt. I'm a mixing engineer. I run a studio called Outback Recordings. We mix a lot of songs every year. Been doing so for, 10, 15 years at this point. And we work a lot with DIY bands who record themselves. So this naturally means we oftentimes guide them through the recording process, help them capture better sounding recordings at the source, at their jam spaces. And we took all these insights and all the lessons that we've learned over the years and built this platform. And now we're helping you make better sounding, more exciting sounding stuff in your jam space as well. So if that sounds like something you want, you're in the right place. If you're already a listener, welcome back. Always good to have you. This is on both YouTube as well as all the podcast apps. So if you discover this on Spotify, you can also watch this if you want. Just know that. And I'm doing this with my wonderful friend and co-host, Malcolm Owen-Flood, who's also been a producer for a long time in his life and has worked with countless bands. And so we're doing this together. Hello, Malcolm. How are you?
Hey, Benny. It's very good, man. I'm very good. How are you?
I'm very good, too. Thank you. Tired.
Awesome.
We both are tired today, but going to make it through.
For whatever reason, we both got very little sleep and had exhausting days ahead of this. But that's all right. Very excited to be here. It's the first time in a long time we've gotten to record an episode. I feel like maybe the longest gap ever. Maybe. That's what it feels like. I'm not sure if it actually has been. But
I feel like we were saying this a lot lately, but
God, we have been. It's been pretty much a year of me disappearing.
Which leads me to some incredible banter that we need to add. We can't go too long today because we're gonna get to the episode, of course, but there is some pretty credible stories that you haven't told on the podcast yet.
Oh, are you talking about the plane engine exploding while I'm flying it?
Yeah. That's pretty much what I'm talking about.
Yeah. We will. We're on a very limited timeline today for getting an episode to you folks out there. But yeah, my life lately has been making a documentary about a old World War II plane that has been repurposed as a firefighting plane. For most of its life now. It's like an 80-year-old plane. And we're kind of telling the story of these two planes, and they're getting retired. It's a fun little documentary. But we're trying to fly it. They've restored it, and now they're trying to fly it to a museum in the States. And I'm in Canada, for everyone that doesn't know. And every time we try and fly it, while we're flying it, the engines stop working, which is a new experience for me, not something that I've ever had happen before.
Just want to repeat, while you were flying it, right?
Yeah. Well, flying, yes. And luckily, there's 4 engines, and we're only losing one at a time. So it's not as, I've since learned, not as scary as you would think. You watch a movie and an engine goes down and the plane's engulfed in flames and crashes instantly. But in reality, you lose an engine and the pilots and engineers look around and say, should we keep going? It's been a really cool project. Super, once in a lifetime opportunity to fly a plane like this. But I get so far, I've been flying in that plane more than once, getting that opportunity many times, and hopefully we make it next time.
Yeah,
stay tuned.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I just saw that. I just got a WhatsApp at some point, and then I think it was a news article of a plane with losing an engine or something, and then you were like, how's that for some banter? And I'm like, that sounds like a good story.
It was a CBC article or something, or maybe it wasn't CBC. It was a local news thing, but they said, plane has to make emergency landing in Victoria, which was, kind of true. We did have to land. We lost an engine, but I can hear all of them. I can hear the pilots and the engineers talking, and it wasn't an emergency to them at all.
Yeah, it
was a
looked
very
like the article made it look pretty much probably
like
more dramatic.
like we crash landed
Yeah.
and had to get rescued. Yeah, I know.
That's what I thought when I saw it, honestly. Yeah.
That's a
man.
better story.
Yeah, I was so glad that didn't happen and you're fine.
Me
It was
too.
just a fun experience.
Me
Awesome.
too.
Great. Okay, cool. So to today's episode, I'd say.
Yes.
This one is, and as the time, like now while we're recording this, I don't know what the title will be yet, but it is about what happens when a producer or mixer works with bands over and over and over again, or when you as a band work with yourself over and over again, because there's the challenge that comes with being your own producer. It's pretty much the same thing that happens when you work with the same producer at a studio all the time. The thing is, like, how do you keep things fresh? How do you avoid repeating yourself? Because that can easily happen, and sometimes we don't even realize. And, many artists that I talk to love to have full creative control. They tell me that all the time. And it's one of the main reasons they get into recording themselves in the first place. And so they want to do it all themselves, not just for budget reasons or whatever, but they want to have the full creative control. But the problem is, and I think Dan Korneff said that once, I'm pretty sure he said it. I don't remember if it was on our episode with him or if I read a post of him, but he said, if you write the songs and you arrange the songs and you play the songs and you produce the songs and you record the songs and you mix it and you master it all, you're going to get a lot of one thing, and that is you. And so in this episode, we want to share a few ways to keep it fresh and to keep it fresh, not repeat yourself, but while still being in control of the creative process. And the end result, of course, because I really know that this is something that a lot of people in our audience want. They don't want to go to a team of professionals, although that is a good idea for many people, but they made the decision to do it themselves because they want to have the say. They want to know it's their record and they want to make the decisions. So yeah, how do we navigate this? And for those of you who work with mixers or producers or mastering engineers, outsource certain things, how do you what can you do when you really love working with a person and you consistently get great results, but you want to avoid, repeating yourself and you want to keep things fresh?
Yeah. And most of our examples, again, will be through the scope of having worked with a band multiple times. We record a single, an EP, an album with them, and then they come back the next year or whatever, and we go again. And it's when that happens that you realize, well, the last thing we did worked. Are we just going to do that again?
Yeah.
Or are we going to push the envelope, right? And try something new? What are we going to even assess it and think, well, what did we like? What didn't we like? What could be better? These kind of things. And I would say that in our position, it's easier to notice that we need to push the envelope. When it's just you in your bedroom recording your entire album, say you're a one-man kind of producer type where you're doing all of it yourself, it's even easier to get stuck in a rut and just go with what you know because it's easy and there's nobody else challenging it, right? And that'll be challenging is like going to be a topic that comes up in this episode, I think, as well.
Yeah, totally. So I love that you said it before we started this episode, that there's even a difference between a band doing it themselves and then this individual one-man operation, basically, or one-person operation, where within a band you at least have, 3, 4, 5 people with different taste in music, different influences. They develop and grow individually, and then that kind of keeps things fresh naturally. Whereas if it's just you also grow and develop, but it's still you. So it's even more likely to run into that problem.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. So do you have a story that you remember from working with a band where that kind of happened, or where you were able to avoid it, or anything like that? Because I have one that is top of mind. But
please start. You kick it off.
Okay. So I was just working with this band called Swallows Rose. They are a punk rock band from Germany. They've worked with me for years now. We are at album number 3, and I also did an EP for them first, I think. So it's the 4th record or so I did with them, and they grew each time. They got to like bigger record labels, and everything's great. And they pretty much reached what the level that like what they can do as a band that still has jobs and lives and families and everything like that. So I'm pretty proud of the progress and I'm proud of what we've achieved already. And so far, so good. The thing is, when that band, and they work really hard and they trust me, and it's like a very good working relationship, and we just track drums for the latest record. And the thing is, when they approached me and said that they wanted to do album number 3, which was 2 years ago, I think we started talking about that. They sent me very early demos, and I know that this band, they work really hard. They write for this album. I think they've written 50 or 60 songs or something crazy like that, and then boiled it down to the 10 or 11 that's going to make it on the record, which is awesome. So they prepared it well in advance, did pre-pro demos and all that. So they sent me the early demos, and I was excited that I get to work with them again, and I love this band and all that. And then I listened to it, and I bet that, like, Dominic, the singer of this band, I think he, and the main songwriter, I think he expected me to say what I used to say always, is like, yeah, great songs, love it. Like, here's a few things I would tweak maybe, but overall great. But my feedback was a little different this time. I heard the songs and I was like, yeah, it sounds like you, and I like that, but I don't know. It's like the same record again, basically. And I didn't want to be mean, but like I didn't know how hard this feedback had hit him at the time, because then he went silent for a while, and he told me later that he had to process this, and he was so excited about these songs, and he just wanted to start the process of making the record. And then he felt like, okay, I need to, like, that's all crap. I need to start over again. He said it's boring, basically, and the songs are shit. And it completely, slowed everything down, brought it all to a halt, basically. Then, after not hearing from him, I was afraid, like, of how things are going to go. And, like, if he gets out of this, block that he had hit then and all that. Then he wrote new things and sent me new stuff. And it was completely different from everything they've done before. Like, it was the complete opposite and very bold, very weird in a way for that band also. But and he didn't particularly like it that much, I think, and the band didn't really like it, and I didn't really like it. But that was necessary, because then after that experience of taking it too far in the other direction, he kind of found a middle ground, or like a new kind of sound that was still the band, that was still them, that felt great for them, but was exciting and fresh enough so that they wouldn't repeat themselves. And then all of a sudden, he got back into a flow, and new songs came out, and like it was just demo after demo after demo, and everybody was more excited than ever about the record. Right. So it was a painful experience for him at first, but we are all super grateful that it happened that way, and that we didn't make the record that they initially want to make. We don't know how people are going to respond yet, or how it's going to turn out, but we are very excited about it. The band is, and so am I. And so,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example of doing the right thing on the next round, of challenging it and being like, okay, yeah, we could do that. We've already done that though. So, is there a point to do that again?
Yeah.
I mean, if you just want to give them more of what they like, then like that's totally valid.
Yeah.
There's bands I love because they're consistent.
Exactly.
I know what they're going to give me, and they give it to me every time.
Yeah.
And that's totally awesome.
I don't want the Bad Religion's record to sound anything else. Like, they sound the same for like 40 years. And
yeah, AC/DC, like they just gave it to you, and it was like, thank you, give me another. When you're ready, I'll take one more album, please. But that's not the case with all artists. Sometimes you want them to push, and more importantly, the artist gets to decide if they want to do that, right? So that might be you stuck in your bedroom, right? We're trying to draw it back to whoever is listening here. As a producer, I turned down an album from a band I loved working with because I just didn't like the songs either. And it was a very similar situation. They sent me all the songs, and they'd done a lot of demos, and I was just like, none of these make me want to work on this. In much nicer words than that, I hope. Yeah. But like, and I didn't think they were bad. I was just like, I'm not going to be a good fit for this, was more so the take for me this time. And I was like, and as somebody that's been involved in all of your work up to now, I think you should be heading in a different direction. They disagreed and went somewhere else, which is great.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be me for sure. But like, that is, even though it didn't have the same result as with you, Benny, it's still, I think, maybe force them to look at it. I hope so anyways.
Yeah.
And then commit to a decision, right?
Yeah.
Because the they did go make that album. I'm not sure how many of the songs were the same and whatnot, but they went in a totally different direction. They went to a live off the floor tracking situation. They changed everything about how we had done things previously. So it's kind of cool that even just from like changing me out, they got this totally different result.
Yeah.
Which is great, because they would have tried to make those songs the way I make songs with them previously, which wouldn't have worked at all.
Yeah.
Would have been bad. So I mean that's a great example. Another kind of avenue, because that's a very like top level pre-production kind of way of looking at things, is how we're going to record the songs. An idea that, or an example that comes to mind for me is this band Stinging Bell. I wish they'd put out the second album because you could actually listen to the two differences, but they broke up before the second one came out. But we did like 3 songs way back, and we did it their way. I was really early in my career. I hadn't earned the trust of anybody to be able to call the shots on how things were going to be done. I could, try and make my case, but they weren't having it. So we did a very like modern kind of like rock, like kind of Nothing But Thieves. What's that drum and bass band? Royal Blood. Kind of vibed album, but trying to grab it live off the floor of the first album, very new band. It just kind of was messy. Ultimately, kind of thing. We did our best, but didn't come out how I want like modern sounding albums to come out at all. But then the next album came. They came back. We met up, and they're like, "Hey, would you like to do the second one with us?" And I was like, "Yes, but like we got to do it my way this time." And I had earned their trust by then. They were like, 100%. You gave us one, now it's yours. And I know it turned out way better. They were super happy with it. Ultimately, they broke up, which is sad. But it just like was that's an example of pushing the envelope and earning trust, which is one thing. The trust to change it up, but also sonically making decisions about, okay, you see how this didn't work? We need to do it this way to get that result. In our cases, we needed perfection. So we needed to overdub things really hard. I'm sure there's another example I could think of on an even smaller scale. Could be, here's a great example that people can actually check out. And we've got them on the podcast, Wet Future, band that I feature a lot because I just love them and what they've done. They DIY'd their entire first album. I mixed it. So they self-recorded everything, including their drums, at their drummer Brett's like garage studio kind of setup. Next album comes around, and they hire a producer and engineer, and they're going and cutting most of their tracks at a studio. So fully big change. It's like, what can we change? Well, it'd be nice to get like the pro treatment was pretty much their decision. And we have an entire episode talking about their mindset going into this. So go look that up. You'll find it and get more insight into that. And then currently I know that they're doing something that's even more in the middle, a more like hybrid approach of working with their producer, but doing as much DIY as they can. And
I think we had them on twice on the podcast, right? They talked about that too. Like, I think...
Right. Well, did we? Because I know we had them on when I was working with them. So that was mostly about their DIY entirely album. And then the second one was about working with their producer, but they still had DIY stuff going on.
Yeah, that's what we talked about in the second episode, actually. That development from like where they had done the one thing, then they had did the other thing, and then they're doing a hybrid in between sort of. They have tried all those things. Yeah.
And they're continuing to experiment with that, which I think is just awesome.
Yeah.
And so like they're changing it up to find what works for them creatively, budget-wise as well, which plays a factor in everybody's right now with this economy. And sonically as well, it's going to be different every time, which I think they dig. I think that they're like this. It's not meant to sound the same as the last thing. It's always meant to be developing, changing, and interesting, which is great. And like those are really, all of these examples we've given are really big changes, but it could be much smaller.
Yeah.
It could be just being like, you know what, the album was great, but our guitar tones sounded super lame and fizzy or something. How do we fix that? And then you just go down that rabbit hole of finding your new guitar chain for the album.
Yeah.
Could be just drums. Darian Gerard, another artist I've brought up plenty of times on here, who Benny saw me play with actually one year. She did a song with a live drummer for the first time recently. It's a big change, right? It's been MIDI drums all the way, and now one song has live drums, and it's like that. It's as much of like I want this to be different as much as it is as an experiment of maybe it's worth seeing what happens here. Maybe I go back after. It could be any reason that you do it, but it's just that she challenged it, thought about it, and followed through and went for it. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it can be small changes or big changes, like you said. Things like you mentioned a guitar chain, or just the way you do drums, or maybe the room you record in. Things like that can make a big difference. And sometimes it's not even. Sometimes you can, how do I say this? Like, you can find a completely new thing to do, or maybe you just need an outside opinion and not even like it can be a very small thing. So, for example, when I work with mastering engineers as a mixer, I often master myself, but then sometimes I work with mastering engineers, and sometimes I do it just to get their outside opinion or feedback. And it's not that every mastering engineer takes a lot of time to give you detailed mix feedback. That's not the case, but sometimes they catch things that I don't really hear, or they might say, just because I know them and they know the bands that I've worked with, sometimes they might just say something like, when we do a single in advance and then a record is following or something, they might make comments that give me hints or like ideas of like, maybe this is exactly the same that we've done before. Or maybe they say, wow, this is complete, for whatever reason, this excites me about this, and this is very interesting or whatever, and then we can do more of that. But just hearing someone else without telling them anything, just hearing what they think about it, basically, someone who knows what they're talking about and who's not friends and family. If you do that early in the process, ideally, then that can oftentimes, I think, help, just that outside perspective and not just being you all the time. Mm-hmm. I know an example from the coaching community, actually, from the Self-Recording Syndicate, our coaching program, where Ryan, a member in there, he's been a long-time member and doing a lot of stuff, and he sometimes had problems like, finishing songs, or he got stuck writing sometimes. He was doubting and questioning his writing and guitar playing abilities a couple of times, although he's a great guitar player. And then drum programming was also he had to do it all as a one-person metal band, basically. And then outside of our coaching, he teamed up with Dan Sugarman, who's the guitar player in Ice Nine Kills, I think. And he got him on as a coach to help him learn new writing approaches, playing approaches, just a fresh perspective on how he writes things. He got a template from, like a songwriting template from Dan Sugarman, and like a drum programming template of like his Superior drummer, certain Superior drummer settings and presets that he likes to use. And when Ryan came back to the program after he started working with Dan, he immediately had a couple of new songs that I've never heard of. Like, they sounded I've never heard anything like that coming from Ryan. Like, it was almost a different genre, although it was not. And it was fresh. It was exciting. The way he talked about it was super exciting. Cool. The drums sounded much better. He got a better understanding of a couple of things. And it helped me work with him a lot better, too. And I just saw how just getting out of his own thing and bringing someone else in who would also challenge him and make him write things outside of his comfort zone, that was part of it, too, like, helped him arrive at something that he's super happy with. It's still him, but it's still completely different to what he's done before.
Right.
And that would have never happened on its own. Like, so, yeah. On its own.
Yeah. So, obviously, the big point we're seeming to be making is that we're big supporters of assessing and then pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty rare that you want to do things the exact same. And I would argue that your own, like, sorry, I would argue that your individual songwriting style and like voice is going to come through and be the through line you need to make it sound like you anyways, regardless to if you change everything.
Yes.
I think people can be overly scared about losing like their sound. So push the envelope, try and learn. If you get it wrong, which you sure can, just go back. Change it back the way you need it to be, like you can always click undo or redo something. That's not a problem. I think it's worth the experiment. Here's a different take on it that's worth considering. This is more so for the people that produce people, and maybe that's your band even. So not going to apply as much to the solo operators, I guess. But what can happen, I'll put it in my own experience because that's easiest to describe. A new band comes and works with me later in my career when I've got credits and experience, and they look up to me and they're kind of like, they're just like, we'll do whatever you say. We don't know what's happening. We trust you. Help us not suck. And then all decisions are mine, essentially, almost entirely. They're just like, tell me what fret to hold. Like oversimplification, but like so much trust, so much trust, and that can be a lot of fun and can really simplify it. Honestly, for somebody like me trying to just make a record sound awesome, it's like don't have to argue about using their completely wrong guitar for the song. Don't have to worry about using the drummers like 14 toms. They're down to just use 2. We can make that work, no problem. And it sounds banging. Next album comes around, and I learned to expect this, and it's totally fine and a good thing, I think, is they start questioning and pushing back. And because they know me now, they're confident, and they don't. It really comes down to confidence, and it's like, well, I kind of wish there was another tom on this song, and there wasn't. It's like, yeah, there should be another tom on this song then. You're gonna, and I think for our audience, it's most likely people recording their own bands. They might trust you to just make all the decisions because you're the recording guy on the first album, but then they're going to start having their own opinions. And it's really important that you don't take that personally because they're right. They are wanting something that they didn't get, and sometimes those decisions could be stupid. Like, no, I want to use my guitar. And it's like a Strat's just not a metal guitar, man. It's just not. But like, you should at least entertain it.
We're gonna get comments on that one on YouTube for sure.
I know. Yeah. Good. Come at me, bro.
Yeah. No, I totally think you're right. And you said before that what you can do when you go wrong. I think, in fact, you should go wrong. I think you should take it too far so that you can then go back and find whatever is right. Like you said, going from 16 toms to 2, and then maybe adding a third one or a fourth one, but I think you have to test the extremes, the limits, because otherwise you don't even know how far you can push it and how what you might explore along the way. And I think that, whatever you can do to challenge yourself and leave your comfort zone is a good thing, not because that is going to be what's going to be on the record then, not the first try, not the extreme, but because the act of like exploring that whole process will get you to, will just, give you new inspiration, new whatever, and will lead to something eventually. So it's more about the process and about trying that. And I think that is a very, very good idea. This is also when you read anything about Rick Rubin, a lot of people misunderstand his way of producing records too, I think. But like, if you read his book and you hear him talk in interviews, that's also what he's all about. He's like, oftentimes without real reason, just because it's different, he makes artists do certain things. And he doesn't even know if it's a good idea or not. He just does it just because it's different. And then that's not the record. But then from that experiment, they find something elsewhere that is actually still the artist and exciting and new and fresh. So I also don't want to say that people need to do something different every single time just for the sake of being different. That's not the point. The point is to try something new, maybe take it too far, and then have more knowledge than before, have experienced things that you haven't before, and then you can take all that and turn it into a new version of yourself, basically. But like, I think that's the idea. So it's not that you have to force it or you have to make something radically different. That's not the point. I think the whole process is the point.
Totally. And I think just like read between the lines, if they're saying they want to use their Strat, what they're really saying is that they're not satisfied with the guitar tone on the last record. Yeah. So don't then attack their Strat like I did. Then just go on a tone quest. Yeah. Be like, what are we trying to hear? Because, that doesn't sound like it to me quite yet. So let's try this. It says, hey, maybe try this other guitar, and figure out what makes both you happy. Because it is also like the scenario I gave, they didn't have a vision on album 1. Mm-hmm. Now they have a vision. Yeah. So we got to try and get there. So it's actually like a super good thing that they're opinionated. You just have to work with them to figure out, because they don't have the technical expertise to just know how to get there.
Yeah. Glad you brought it up. You said the thing about the vision there, because that's such a big part of it. Sometimes people they just do the same thing because they don't even know what they want to do. And it's just the easiest and most natural thing to do what you already know. But growth happens when you do things you don't know yet. And when you learn new skills, listen to new stuff. But it's easy to stay in our comfort zone, of course, and do the things we already know. And the vision that a lot of artists are lacking oftentimes, that needs to be worked on first. And I think one of the things you can do there is, I bet that most people, even if you're very into one genre or whatever, I think most people listening to this listen to different types of music. Like, that's true for many people, that you have maybe your favorites or whatever, but there's other things you kind of enjoy too, even if you don't admit it. But like, now go through all the things you listen to that you enjoy for one reason or another. Think about what you actually like about these things, and then maybe you can take some of these outside of your genre and use them as inspiration, and just be aware of the fact that you don't just like that one thing. There's many things you like for various reasons, and some people never actively think about this. So maybe just go on a quest, like you said, like you can go on the tone quest, but you can also go on a finding what I like kind of quest, and just listen to music for a while, very actively and consciously, and just learn what you actually enjoy about music. And then you'll find, hey, I'm always drawn to these types of songs. Why is that? And then what do these have? And then compare that with what you have, and maybe there's something you can now try, like, be very open, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely be open. It can be hard sometimes.
Yeah, it can be.
Especially in band settings.
Yeah.
And you're just like, this guy's always wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a challenge too. Like, okay, here's the thing. We said it's a challenge if you're on your own, and it's easier when you're a band. There are other challenges though when you're in a band, like I said, because then if everybody goes on their quest and everybody has their own weird little things that they like, and then now you have to bring it all together and make a record and make sense of all that, and then that can be challenging for sure, because communication and all of that, and
Yeah. I got to recommend another podcast. But don't leave us. Keep coming back. Yeah. There's a podcast called Tape Notes. Have you checked out Tape Notes, Benny?
I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever listened to it.
Highly recommend.
Cool.
The Bring Me the Horizon album on their latest stuff was a very good one to jump into if anybody's interested in that kind of modern music, uber modern music, and how they do it. But you get a really good look at how decisions are made, how experimentation is handled, which is really fascinating when you're listening to a band who has put out many, many records for many, many years now, and how they navigate that, and just don't get offended with each other, it seems. They're just like, anything goes, we throw it all at the wall, and whatever sticks is what stays, which is really cool.
Yeah, thanks for that recommendation. I will check that out for sure. That's always inspiring, seeing how the people do it. Yeah,
totally. What's actually even more fascinating, just thinking about it, is that extends out beyond the band as well, with the producers and the co-producers that they hire. So Dan Lancaster is their main producer and mix engineer, but Zach Cervini was like a fly-in as well. So they would just email, they'd just be like, we should get a Cervini ID on this, send it over to him, he'd send something back, and they're like, cool, that's how lax it was. I mean, Cervini's got amazing credit, so it makes sense, but it's like he wasn't even in the room.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And then they mentioned another like K-pop producer that they brought in to do electronic stuff, and just flying in tracks to them, just full trust, like, you do your thing, we'll see if we like it. It's really, like, so many people are way more protective than that.
Yeah, totally. No, I love that story, and I will definitely check that out. That's awesome. Didn't even know. I thought Cervini mixed an entire album for them.
You know what? He might have mixed that one.
Yeah,
maybe
but it's
Dan
definitely a
just produced
collaboration on many of their records. Yeah, sure. That's cool. Yeah. And if you wanna get outside feedback on your songs and your recordings, and you feel like you've maybe hit this plateau where you don't really know what to do next or whatever, please just apply for the Self-Recording Syndicate, our coaching program. Go to theselfrecordingband.com, fill out a little application, and then we can jump on a completely free call, talk about your situation. I can listen to your music, give you my thoughts, my feedback, and then also create a full roadmap for you about like what I would do in your situation, how to get out of this, how to make it more exciting next time, what I would change, how I would approach things, what I'm hearing, whatever. And we'll come up with a full plan for you. And if you approve that plan, we can work together. If not, we just part ways and you don't pay us anything. This is a great way to get someone's opinion on this. And we'll see what this leads to. Go to theselfrecordingband.com and apply.
Yeah, take them up on that. And I think we probably got to wrap this up timing-wise today.
Definitely got to run.
So if you wish there was a part 2 of this, let us know. You can message us on Instagram or on the YouTube comments or Facebook group. We got a Self-Recording Band Facebook community as well. Any of those places, hit us up and we'll make another.
100%. Thank you.
Part 2. Right on.
All right. Thank you for listening, as always. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Adios. Bye.